Okay, so Google Forms Part 2. And in this part, I'm going to make this part will be about actually making the form itself. So basically, this is what you've got. You can add different types of questions. You can add as many questions as you want. There might be some upper limit, but I've never reached it and I don't know what it is. You can also add different sections. So for instance, if you wanted, well, let me get started. I'll show you how we normally do this. We'll start out by saying, we will ask for some personal information. So last name, first name, and so on. We might ask which class are you in, A, B, C, D, student number, things like that. And that's just sort of the personal info section. So student will put in their email address and then name and name. Now, when you create a question, you oftentimes want to make it required, but not always. But things like personal information you would want to make required. And you notice when it is required, you see a little asterisk up there, the little red asterisk. Now the other thing is, you may want to have an answer key. Of course, last name, first name, you wouldn't want to have an answer key. But what you might want is response validation. So validation, basically, if a person enters the wrong type of information, it will give you a warning. So for last name, you wouldn't want a number, you would want some sort of text. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to contain anything specific, but it should be text. And if there's an error, you can have it say, something like that. Please enter your first name only. If a student accidentally hits the 3 instead of the E, for instance, you might want that to display an error. And you can do that for any of the questions. For things like student number, so for instance, I know that my students' numbers are less than like 3,000 or something like that. So you might want to not have an answer key, but add response validation that says number, and let's say between 100 and 200, right? Custom error text. You might want to add something like that, so that if they enter the wrong information and the system can't validate it, it gives some sort of an error there. And so that they can correct it before they've submitted it. So at any rate, that's what I would normally do first, is ask for personal information. And again, I'm going to treat this like it's a quiz or an exam, because I think most people watching this are probably teachers. That's what this YouTube channel is mostly for anyways. And that's, I think, what folks are mostly using Google Forms for right now. But the same type of stuff would apply to questionnaires anyways. So at this point, once I've got personal information, I would create another section. So we can do add section. And I might call this part multiple choice. You wouldn't know I'm an English teacher by my spelling. And then for a description, maybe something like that. And then you can start adding questions again. And now obviously you'd want them to be multiple choice questions. So and you can see it will give suggestions in some cases, A, B, C, D. And if you want to, you can choose add other. And if a student selects other, they can select that radio button and then type in something other than A, B, C, or D. Now, do you want to make this required or not? There is no response validation for multiple choice because the responses are set, but you might want to shuffle the option order. Now, when you check that, it won't show that it's shuffled here. But when the student looks at it, or when the person looks at it, the options will be shuffled. That can help to stop some cheating without shuffling all the questions. So at any rate, let's create another section. Maybe this is the writing section. And we can do add a question. Maybe we make this one a paragraph question. So, question. And there are differences between the different question types. So multiple choice is obviously multiple choice. long answer is long answer, short answer is short answer, but there are others. So let's do another section. And I'm just going to call this miscellaneous. And we'll just put in some different types of questions. So for instance, you could have checkboxes where we'll do add all, and we won't do the add other. Let's make this one required. And in this case, a student can select more than one possible answer, or for that matter, select all answers. So that's another question type you can use. Let's see, drop downs. And this will give them a drop-down box to choose from, which is basically multiple choice, but with a different interface, and that might be a friendlier interface for whatever reason. You might find drop-downs are better to use for touch devices, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you and your students think that checkboxes or multiple choice radio buttons are better than drop-downs. I don't know, but it's an option that you have. And for that matter, it can be used just to mix things up a little bit as well. Just to, even though the possible responses are the same, and the question may be the same between multiple choice or drop down, just to change things up a little bit, sometimes that's preferable. Let's look at another possible one. There are, let's see, file upload, which is neat because if we do continue, we can choose the number of files that a student can upload. So let's say 5, and the maximum size. So let's say 1 gigabyte because let's see. So, okay, I've selected gigabyte and it says this form is no longer accepting responses because a single response can exceed the 1 gigabyte total size limit. So, I can come in here to options and change this size limit. Let's make it 10 gigabytes, right? And that's the maximum size of all files uploaded. And so that's basically just sort of it gives you a warning so that you don't exceed the amount of information available, the amount of space available in your drive. For most teachers, that's not going to matter, but it will give you that little bit, that little error if there's a problem. You can choose specific file types, and maybe I only want to allow documents, PDFs, and images, right? Maybe I want to allow all of them, maybe any file type whatsoever, even if it's not any of those things, even if it's a .bin file, which I can't imagine you would want to accept, but you could. So the question might be, upload an image of your handwritten paragraph. We've done this before where students will write a paragraph by hand, take a picture, and then upload that picture. That works. There's lots of different reasons to do file upload. Let's see one of the other ones. Linear scale, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. I guess you can only do 1 to 10. You could use this especially for surveys or questionnaires, but you could also do this to elicit feedback. You might want to have a question at the end of an exam that says something like, something like that, like self-assess. Give yourself a score from 1 to 10 on how confident you are about this material, or how well do you think you'll do on this exam, something to that effect. That can show some, and you can see how it shows up as a wide linear scale. That can give some insight into a student's mental state, into what the student's idea of their self is. You could also choose a multiple choice grid or a checkbox grid, and in that case, we use this oftentimes for vocabulary. So we'll do like definition 1, definition 2, vocab 1, vocab 2. You may want to require a response in each row. And then you may want to shuffle the row order, and this will shuffle the rows, but not the columns. And again, when you see it here, it won't look any different. It will always look like this, but when you look at the preview, when you choose preview, it will randomly change the row order so that what you see is a real preview of what your student might see. Now, let's get into answer keys. So you can have an answer key for each of these where you assign a certain number of points to each question, and then you choose which answer goes with which. And then you can do done, and you can change that. Now, if I come back up here, if I choose an answer key, make it worth a few points, and maybe C and A are the correct answers. With multiple choice, I can choose an answer key, make it worth a few points, and maybe C is the correct answer, or for that matter, maybe C or D are correct answers for multiple choice. And if they choose each one, either of them, sorry, not both, but either of them, they'll get it correct. Maybe it's only one. You have some options with that. If I come back down here and create a new question, checkbox grid is another one, and it's a similar idea, but rather than being a grid like this with multiple choice radio buttons where you can only choose one per row, with a checkbox you can choose more than one per row. Now I will say that I still can't spell. I will say that you can still shuffle the row order, that on occasion I'll mix up which is best, row versus column, because I still forget offhand if it's better to have the definitions in columns or in the rows versus the vocab terms. But once you've done it once, you'll know, and then if you need to, you can just manually switch the rows with the columns. So I can make this worth however many points, and then maybe it's that. Maybe those are the correct answers for whatever it is. Okay, that's fine. Let's see, are there any other question types? Date or time are just that. You would enter a date or a time. Now, you can import questions, which is something that I've never done, but you can import them from other forms, so that can make things easy if you want to, especially if you're going to have like maybe an exam at the end of the term comprised of questions from the entire term, where you want to combine multiple questions, or even combine 3 or 4 forms but then remove a couple of questions from it. That can come in handy there. You can add titles and descriptions into different places, and this is handy if you have a written section that you want to write in. So you can make this into a question, like say, so you've added a title and description, and then below that you can have questions. Again, you wouldn't want to change the question order if that's the case, but you can do that by adding a title and description. You can add an image as well. And notice all the places that you can pull images from. I have no idea what images are in Google Drive, but let's see. I think I have a couple in here. Sure, we'll add this one. Okay, there we go, we got an image. And you can modify the size. Hover text. You can have hover text that goes over it. We'll see that in a moment. I haven't used that one before, actually. You can also add videos, and what's nice about that is you can just do a regular YouTube search. So my video is not the first one to come up. At any rate, you can because it's checking all the Turkish videos first because of my location, or because of the settings for this this account. But at any rate, you can search for different videos, and you can add a YouTube video, or you can add a video that's from a YouTube link. So if you already know what video you want to add, you can just paste the link there. That comes in handy, especially for things like English or other languages. When you want to have a listening section, you can make it a listening section with video, and then have questions below it. Is there anything I'm missing? Video, image, description. Section questions, import questions section. So basically that's what you would do to create the exam. Now notice it'll add up what the total number of points are for this, and we will get into responses in the next video. I think that's where I'll pause this here, but really quickly, let's have a look at the preview. So by the way, when you add different sections, the student has to click next to go to the next section and see what happens. See, with these required questions, it won't let you go to the next section. So, and now you see I put in something and it's not a correct number. So even if I put in 1, because remember I said it's got to be between 100 and 200. So next, valid email address. And this forces students to actually pay attention to what they're doing, and other folks. So this is the next section. I don't think I made this required. Yeah, I don't think I made this one required. Writing section, and here's miscellaneous. I don't see the hover text on this though, so I'm not sure what hover text is. But at any rate, this is what your questions will look like. And obviously they'll be better than this because they'll have actual information. But this is really nice in terms of seeing what the form will actually look like. And then when your student is done, they hit submit and their response is recorded. And that's what I'll go into in the next video. So hopefully this helps a bit. See you in the next one.